June 22, 1941 at 4 o'clock in the morning, the Army of Germany and its allies invaded the territory of the USSR. The German army acted in accordance with the Barbarossa Plan, which involved the penetration of tank divisions to great depths in order to encircle and destroy the divisions of the Red Army. The German command planned to repeat its success in France and Poland, inflicting a lightning defeat on the Soviet Union. Germany and its allies threw 103 divisions into battle, which operated as part of Army Group Center, North and South. It should be mentioned that the Soviet covering armies located in the immediate vicinity of the border consisted of 77 divisions, many of which were not fully manned. Thus, only 38 of the mentioned divisions were able to offer serious resistance, which provided the German army with an impressive numerical superiority in the main directions of attack. German aviation, which acted in accordance with the Barbarossa Plan, managed to destroy a huge number of Soviet aircraft at the airfields with a sudden massive attack and thereby gain air supremacy. The tactics of the German army gave results, thanks to which she managed to capture vast territories and, forming boilers, captured a large number of Soviet soldiers. At the same time, despite the failures and the numerical superiority of the enemy in the main directions of attack, the Soviet army offered fierce resistance. Since the resistance of the Red Army over time only intensified by the beginning of September, it became obvious to the German command that the Barbarossa Plan had failed and the war could become protracted. To remedy the situation, the German command is developing Operation Typhoon by September 19, which involves the encirclement and destruction of Soviet troops in the areas of Vyazma and Bryansk, followed by movement towards Moscow. According to the plan of the German command, the establishment of control over Moscow, which was not only the capital of the Soviet Union, but also an important transport hub, was supposed to undermine the morale of the Red Army and significantly reduce the ability to supply it. To attack Moscow, the German command involved 1,929,000 soldiers, 1,700 tanks and 1,390 aircraft, which ensured an impressive advantage over the Soviet army, which had 1,250,000 soldiers, 990 tanks and 667 aircraft at its disposal in this sector of the front. On September 26, the German army goes on the offensive, which is developing quite successfully. German tank divisions managed to break through the defenses of the Soviet army and encircle the city of Vyazma on October 6, 1941. Thanks to the rapid breakthrough of the German tank divisions, the Soviet troops near Bryansk were also surrounded. The surrounded Soviet divisions made attempts to break through, which were suppressed by superior enemy forces. On October 12, German troops began an assault on the fortifications of the Moshaysk defense line, the construction of which began on July 16, but was never completed. By October 18, German troops managed to overcome the Moshaysk defense line, capturing Moshaysk and Maloyaroslavets, after which they continued to move towards Moscow. Also on October 14, the 3rd German Panzer Group established control over the city of Kalinin, planning to continue the offensive to bypass Moscow from the north, but the fierce resistance of the Red Army did not allow this plan to be realized. On October 19, heavy rains began, which made dirt roads practically unsuitable for the movement of vehicles. Thus, the rain stopped the advance of the German divisions, but the Soviet army also experienced great difficulties in pulling reinforcements to Moscow. A relative lull formed at the front, which lasted until October 23, when the German army continued its offensive, attacking Tula. The Soviet army hastily strengthened the defense of the city using the detachments of the Bryansk front, which managed to break out of the encirclement. On October 29, German divisions, having reached the outskirts of Tula, attacked the city. Fierce fighting for Tula continued until November 2. As a result of the stubborn resistance of the Red Army and local militias, German troops were driven back from the city. By November 1, 1941, the German army had temporarily stopped the offensive in order to bring up reserves and accumulate enough ammunition to continue the attack. The Red Army also took advantage of the temporary respite, which hastily strengthened the defenses and brought up reserves. On November 7, a parade was held in Moscow dedicated to the next anniversary of the revolution, during which soldiers went directly from Red Square to the front, which made it possible to raise the morale of the Soviet army. By November 13, thanks to the frost, the German army managed to restore supply lines, which allowed it to continue the offensive. According to the plan, the German command attack on Moscow was to be carried out simultaneously from two directions. In the north, German divisions were to attack in the direction of the city of Klin, and in the south, German troops were to bypass the fortified area built in the vicinity of Tula, surround it and continue the offensive towards Cologne. According to the plan, the German armies advancing from the north and south were supposed to meet in the Noginsk region and thereby close the encirclement around Moscow. The offensive of the German troops resumed on November 14. The 3rd Panzer Army advancing in the north encountered fierce resistance from the Soviet troops, but at the cost of huge losses, it still managed to take the city of Klin on November 23. Continuing the offensive of the German army, on November 24, they managed to take Solnechnogorsk, and on November 27, German troops occupied Krasnaya Polyana, which was only 29 kilometers from the Kremlin. The German divisions advancing in the northern direction could not develop their success, because due to the fierce resistance of the Red Army, their forces were exhausted and in some regiments there were no more than 200 soldiers capable of continuing combat operations. In turn, the Red Army discharged water from the Istra and Ivankovsky reservoirs, which did not allow the enemy to continue the offensive in this direction in the near future. Meanwhile, in the southern direction, the advancing German divisions were able to reach the outskirts of the city of Kashira by November 26, but the counterattack carried out by the Red Army forced them to hastily retreat to their original positions. For the German command, it became obvious that they would not be able to surround Moscow with the available forces. Therefore, on December 1, the German army launched a frontal attack on Moscow. During the offensive, the German divisions encountered fierce resistance from the Red Army in the narrow Fominsk region, due to which the attack quickly bogged down. At this time, the Soviet command launched a counterattack with the forces of the 20th and the 1st Shock armies, as a result of which the German troops were driven back to their original positions. Since the German army suffered serious losses in attempts to encircle Moscow, it had to temporarily refuse active operations and wait for the replenishment of battered divisions with people and military equipment. German intelligence reported that the Red Army did not have the strength to conduct a counteroffensive, so the command of the Army Group Center planned to continue the attack on Moscow after a short respite, but it turned out differently. In fact, the Red Army received reinforcements, although not in such volumes as to ensure its numerical superiority. The arrival of fresh divisions allowed the Soviet command to launch a counteroffensive. By December 5, the Soviet command had at its disposal 1,100,000 soldiers, about 770 tanks and 1,000 aircraft. While at the disposal of the Army Group Center was 1,700,000 soldiers, 1,170 tanks and 615 aircraft. Despite the fact that the numerical superiority was on the side of the German army, its divisions were badly battered after an unsuccessful attempt to encircle Moscow, while the Red Army received a significant number of fresh divisions. In addition, the Soviet command managed to gain an advantage in the number of aircraft, which deprived the German army of air supremacy. The counteroffensive of the Red Army began on December 5 simultaneously in all directions. During this offensive, aviation was actively used. The German army fiercely resisted, but nevertheless, on December 13, the Soviet troops managed to capture the city of Klin. In the Kalinin area, the Red Army managed on December 9 to break through the enemy defenses and thereby create a threat of encirclement of the German troops stationed in the vicinity of the city. On the night of December 16, in order to avoid encirclement, the German troops left Kalinin and the city passed into the hands of the Red Army. Also, during the counteroffensive of the Red Army, by December 14, it was possible to surround the 45th and 134th German infantry divisions in the area of Ilets. Realizing the criticality of the situation, Lieutenant General von Kohenhausen, who commanded the 134th Division, shot himself. By the evening of December 16, the Red Army managed to disperse and partially destroy the encircled enemy divisions. Continuing the offensive of the Red Army, by December 30, they managed to dislodge enemy units from Kaluga, capturing a large amount of equipment and ammunition. Immediately after the completion of the counteroffensive near Moscow, the Red Army, in accordance with the directive of the headquarters of the Supreme Commander of January 7, 1942, began the Rzew-Wyazemski operation, the purpose of which was to encircle and destroy the main forces of Army Group Center in the region of Rzew and Vyazma. It was not possible to achieve the goals of this operation, since the German troops, having taken up the defense, managed to keep Rzew and Vyazma. Nevertheless, the Red Army managed to inflict the first major defeat on the German troops, pushing them back from Moscow at a distance of 100 to 250 kilometers. Despite the victory, the numerical advantage still remained on the side of the German army, but at the same time it became obvious that the plans of the German command to conduct a lightning war had completely failed. The war was still far from over, and both sides focused on drawing up new plans for the conduct of hostilities, taking into account the changed situation on the front. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel, click on the bell so you don't miss new videos.